We are in the eye of the octagonal storm with 7 games behind us and 7 games still to come. Today, we'll be taking a temperature check of the Stars and Stripes campaign to date, as well as discussing some of Gregg Berhalter's hard-to-understand selection choices, or at least harder to understand. The Qué Golazo USMNT Hour begins right now. Hey everyone, make sure you check out our full Jamaica versus USA preview available wherever you get your podcasts. And for those of you who need to see our beautiful faces, it's always free and available on the Qué Golazo YouTube channel. And if you're watching this live on YouTube, I can't emphasize this enough, everyone. Hit that like button. Smash it, smack it. Also, we want to hear from you, so get in the comments section, share your thoughts, ask a question, get things off your chest. Our producer will throw them up on the screen, or at least the best ones, or hot takes. We get into those as well, and we'll make sure that we engage with those. And some of you that are listening to this in podcast form, that's nice. You know what's even nicer? Subscribing to the Qué Golazo podcast, wherever you get your podcast, and take a minute to leave us a glowing rating and a review. Life hack. You can do that now while you listen. It doesn't take any time. It's free. Being nice is free, Jimmy. I don't know if you knew that. Did you know that being nice is free? Saying nice things to people on the internet is free?
Yeah, but that doesn't get you any traction. If you want the clicks, if you want the engagement, you got to be negative.
Okay, here we go.
That's what I've learned.
Give us 5 stars and then throw some heat at us. But you got to give us the 5 stars, to engage.
Yeah. Like,
if you want
put it in all caps. Put it in all caps or something.
Yeah, I will say though,
I really love these guys. These guys are the best. You know, the U.S. men's national team. I can't get enough of them. But put it in all caps, so it gets.
And by the way, Jimmy, on our CTA, I talked about, if you're listening to this in podcast form, they don't get to see your, what would we call that hat? Does a hat like that have a type of name?
It looks like a Mad Hatter hat. Like
Mad Hatter hat. Yeah, but it's in the red, white, and blue, stars and stripes.
Yeah, I kind of feel like I got Rocky Balboa vibes when I wear this thing. But
okay. I don't see it. But whatever makes you happy.
What kind of matches the shorts that he was wearing when he?
Oh yeah, there we go. I see that now.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, you got me on board now. So
that's kind of where I am with this hat. It's relatively comfortable. It's obscene, and I'm here because I've caught the fever, baby. I am in the Dos Cero fever. I'm in the bubble, and not that I was never all in on the U.S. men's national team, but it just feels good that everybody else seems to be.
Oh, dude, Jimmy, I gotta tell you right off the top, 43 Martin says USA overrated. Now, I'm not gonna bite on that.
Wait, is that a Mexico fan? I can't.
Yeah, USA overrated. Now, listen, I don't want to bite on the comment itself, but the meat within that, Jimmy. Do you think that the U.S. has it's hard when you get into a Dos Cero, right? Because you get caught up in the emotion. I go back to the Nations League final, and I remember having a conversation about it where the U.S. didn't play well in the Nations League final for the most part. But for you and I, as having been in those Mexico games, you get caught up in the emotion of what that means to beat Mexico, especially when Mexico goes up first minute and to claw and fight your way back. You just feel like, wow, this is a huge win. And then when you add 2018 and all this burden of being a fan of the U.S. men's national team in the U.S., where you felt like people, you lost a lot of respect, even from the casual fan that were like, yeah, but they don't even qualify. At least Kevin, by the way, is saying the U.S. men's national team is greater than El Tri. But do you think that there is a bit of is this team better than they were in the summer? We've talked about the fact that they haven't really played great through most of qualifying for large periods. There have been moments in second half team. But do you think the U.S. men's national team is overrated based on the points they have now? Or, and I guess we have to define overrated. But
overrated. Okay, let's define overrated, because we're talking about the European champions, Italy, who backs are up against the wall to even qualify for this World Cup. They missed out on 2018 as well. So it's not like, I think you go through spells of being overrated and not. And Italy has to go to Northern Ireland and basically get a draw, but Switzerland apparently have done the business. I'm talking in real time right now.
Yeah.
That as it stands right now, Switzerland would go through and qualify automatically, and Italy would have to go into the playoff. When they went into the playoff for 2018, they lost to Sweden over 2 legs. Everybody goes through an overrated stage with a national team or a club at some point. Are we overrated? I guess it depends on who you're asking. For me, we definitely playing better than we did in the summer, 100%. And I think that's because more of these players are getting to play with each other more. More of these players are gaining confidence within the system that Gregg has set up. And we're getting more and more reps with each other in high-pressure situations. I hope that our team comes out of that doing better. But that is if an infrastructure and a plan is in place. We could look at Jamaica. Let's just use them because they're our opponents tomorrow. Jamaica have so much talent. But if there's not a plan in place to make it happen, like they got Mikel Antonio, let's use him as an example. You get some of these UK-based guys to come play for Jamaica. Why are they being brought into the team in World Cup qualifying? What about the year before that when you could actually have that time to assimilate your domestic players with the players that play overseas? They didn't have that window, and now they're trying to cram it all together and hoping for the best. Like, well, we have world-class players. Why can't they just figure it out? Because it's not that goddamn easy. And so when you have the summer that we did and we had the luxury of 2 significant tournaments and playing all the way through to the end, it gives us more reps with our player pool and gets us an opportunity to know who we can trust. Miles Robinson comes out of that, right? He's a great example of that. Anthony Robinson comes in and really makes the left back position his own. We see Matt Turner now actually competing and pushing Zack Steffen to have to be even better. And Ricardo Pepi, right? He comes out of nowhere, and you have all these situations that it gives us an opportunity to really test our talent pool. And I think we're lucky that way. Now we can take advantage of that as our guys get into it. Overrated, underrated. God, I feel like that line moves a lot. But
yeah,
if you're a bitter fan and you don't like the US, then your agenda's already been set, and you're always gonna feel like you're gonna find a reason not to like.
Well, this is interesting for me because, and just we'll get into some roster updates and stuff. But when we talk about overrated, underrated, you also have to add Gregg Berhalter to this conversation. And I'm not a Gregg Berhalter sympathizer. You and I talk about this all the time. The way in which he was hired didn't feel very good, especially how long it took to hire him. Some of the roster decisions he made early on, some of the roster decisions he's made lately in terms of changing or rotating his squad. I know people are very critical of certain players that get called in. But when you beat Mexico 3 times in a calendar year, and all 3 of them are not friendlies, they are for something. They are for points. They are for a trophy. That is worth something in my book. And overrated, underrated, whatever, as you said. But to do that, I think is really powerful and really important to acknowledge that as an achievement that is very hard to do. Mm-hmm. And that comes down to whether you thought they played well or not, whether, we had to claw our way back in the Nations League when we had to, didn't really have much in the Gold Cup final and had to take it to the end to beat them, or kind of leave it to this game for quite a while just to be lucky to be up at halftime. You can break down all these moments, like you said. If you've already got it made up in your mind, you're going to be like, yeah, but the U.S. wasn't good in the Nations League final. Mexico should have beat them. Mexico should have won the Gold Cup final. Mexico should have had this one because they had 2 big chances in the first half. But you and I both know when you're on the field, none of that means anything. Yeah, you feel a bit lucky at times when you get away with a chance or they don't finish or punish you. But when you get out of those things, it builds something. It builds character. It builds team cohesion and all these things you get out of that. So I just want to give a little bit of a shout out to this team to do that in a year. Overrated or underrated, you could look at all the players and say, yeah, but they should do it in more fashion or more style and more whatever. I want to know from everybody as well in the comments. Yes, if you think the U.S. men's national team is overrated. And if you don't, throw that in there. We're going to make Dez count them all. So if you want to spam them, that'll be fine. And we'll make them count them all up and see what people think. But, I think it's a little bit of a loaded question for sure. But I certainly think if you don't have any sort of over, under, and then something in the middle, it's hard to answer that appropriately. But I want to know everyone's thoughts.
I'll jump in and say really quickly that when I played on the 2006 World Cup team, that's my flex of the day.
Yeah, geez Louise, Jimmy. What are we? Let me hold on. The counter is 8 minutes and 40 seconds in. We've now talked about ourselves playing against Mexico, and you've talked about yourself in a World Cup. We're on a hot streak today.
I just want to state for the record that when we were leading up to that World Cup, we were ranked number 3 in the world by FIFA rankings. Now, whatever you think about FIFA rankings,
that was an insane period though, when it went from like 9 to 7 to 3, and you're like, whoa, what's happening?
Yeah. I was on the team. I was like, I think we're overrated. And I was on the team,
But when we broke the top 10 for that first time, though, that was an incredible moment.
It was.
To be fair. 3 is something different, but 10 is.
And it also, I think, set some unrealistic expectations on the group and what we were supposed to go do. We were supposed to build off of the quarterfinal run that happened in 2002, which felt a little unfair because we happened to hit a familiar opponent in Mexico in the round of 16. We actually played our best game against Germany and lost. And for about 10 minutes of that last game when we got smoked by Poland, we weren't going to go through to the next round. So we had there were fine margins of success and failure at the highest of levels. And it was tough. Now, it is what it is, right? That's come and gone. But to your point, it did allow us to start to set and maybe hold each other accountable. Like, hey, we are capable of being this type of team. And that's important. So now to tie that back into this current team, because we won the Nations League, to your point, we didn't play great. Mexico maybe deserved to win that one. Okay, you still have to make the plays, though, to finish that off. Didn't do it. Same thing in the Gold Cup final. And now in this other game, we've actually gotten progressively better against Mexico over these 3 games. And I think that speaks a lot towards the group because it's kind of a mesh between the Gold Cup team and the Nations League team. And the future's bright. I mean, whether you want to accept it or not, our team is pretty good. And if you're another team, I don't know, or another nation, do you want to draw the U.S. in your group? I'm not so sure that you do, because you know that we started to regain some of that identity that I think we lost a little bit over some time, was that fighting and scratching and doing whatever is necessary to win a game. And I think we're starting to find that right balance of players that can obviously get the ball on the ground and create and do things, some special things, both collectively and individually, and also be willing to fight and scrap and get after it. Now, I don't know if we're going to be into the Chaka Rodriguez eye gouging, but, you know, that's kind of where Mexico is right now, and almost a microcosm of what they have to resort to try to get results, where we're trying to play and kick your ass in as much in a fair way as possible.
I do want to say that you're right in that the U.S. has gotten progressively better through in these games, and I think that's hard to deny. And then we're seeing more cohesion from the team, better players stepping up. Again, you go back 8 months ago, and there was no Ricardo Pepi. There was not really Yunus Musa yet. You know, Yunus Musa, I think, was just Nations League and what didn't really find his form until qualifying in his last, and that was the last round where you're like, wow, look at this guy. This guy is so good. But now when I think about the way other national teams would play against them and the different strengths and tools that we have, the ability to beat this team in a number of positions, the only thing that I think is missing is a little bit of that hatred, a little bit of that meanness. You know, I think the fight, the effort is there. And when I'm thinking about being very, very hard to play against and not necessarily eye gouging, but a little bit of that killer instinct, a little bit teams being afraid to play you. And by the way, I can't remember who had just said it, but I think it was David, his name was, said that he tells his girlfriend that we always find a way to bring up us playing on the national team. Obviously, that's the whole point of this. This is the USMNT Hour, this U.S. Men's National Team Hour. We have to talk about that because there's a lot of people out there spitting a lot of fire that have never been in the trenches, and at least we have that to lean on when we say something.
Yeah. And also we played for the team, and we played in some big games, and we wear ridiculous hats while we're on YouTube. Yeah, I mean, what do you want? What else do you want from us? So yeah, I think that level of insight, I hope separates us a little bit, but we do have a lot of fun. And obviously there's a lot of smart people out there. You don't have to have played the game to understand it. We definitely respect that. And there's some really good takes out there, but there's some that are so overly emotional that need to be based in reality a smidge, and maybe not taken as far as it's been taken. But I did see a good point about how Gregg Berhalter has come in and set up a good system and put something in place, right? Some parameters, some shape to how we're going to make this moving forward. Do I still feel like at times he's flying by the seat of his pants? 1,000%. Does sometimes he get into his way? Did you see that starting lineup against Panama? I mean, yes, 1,000%. Even in Honduras, away to Honduras that first half, he didn't get it right, but he makes adjustments to his credit. It's almost like he raises his hand, looks at himself in the mirror going, yeah, we got that wrong, dude. Let's get this sorted out.
You know who also over tinkers? The best manager in the world, and Pep Guardiola. And 100%. So I'm okay with tinkering if you learn from that tinkering. If you always get it wrong, well, Pep in the Champions League final is probably wants that back. But guys, if you're just tuning in, make sure you like, subscribe, throw those comments in to us as well so we can get you guys onto the show. Our producer Des will throw those up. Jimmy, let's talk a little bit about the fact that Joe Scally is not going to start. I'm surprised by this one again. Because I mean, let me give you a take real quick, and then follow up on this.
Okay,
I'm surprised only because of the fact that you could have done this last camp. You could have had him in for 3 games last camp, where he's just with the team, integrate him into the squad, let him get some experience, so that he comes back. Maybe you put him in 10, 15 minutes if you have the right circumstances or opportunity in one of those 3 games. Which I think that your final home game you would have. You're playing against, or your game against Jamaica, you could have gotten him in. And then you come back into this camp and you can start to trust him a little bit differently than you did. Well, now you've got this streak. You've got good players. You don't need to change DeAndre Yedlin. I agree with all that, but it almost makes me more mad that he wasn't called into the last camp.
Yeah, that's where my point would be. That was the opportunity to bring him in and get him seasoned with the team and to understand how it's going to work and to watch how others are going to prepare for a big game against a rival. I think we talked about a previous experience with me when I got called into my first camp and I watched Eddie Pope do his thing and prepare in a tiny, tiny locker room, and everybody's trying to get ready, and there's people banging on the ceiling, and it's just noise. And like, how do you focus and make sure you're going out there and doing your job? It was very informative for me and important in my growth as a national team player. And I think Joe Scally, I think that the hang up to your point is that we should have done that the window before. And he might have actually been useful. Maybe he even gets in against Panama because everybody was getting a chance to play against Panama. So we missed an opportunity there. And I think maybe even Gregg would acknowledge that. Maybe not exactly right now, but down the line in a couple of months when things that the spotlight's not burning as bright as it is.
Yeah. Has anybody?
I'm okay with Yedlin starting again. I thought he was good, and I want to continue to build those relationships with consecutive games. We have this rare opportunity. The next 2 qualifying windows are 3 games in 8 days again. And you're going to get that rotating of the squad, and it just throws off any type of momentum we can build with a specific group. We've seen it in midfield, right? To the point that was made earlier in the comments. And I feel like now that we have the midfield, and obviously McKennie's out because of yellow card accumulation, we'll get into who we think should start there. But that has been helpful for us, and we can see that's the engine. Now, to Pablo's point, why are we in such a rush to start Joe Scally? It's less about starting him. It's more just about, do we think we can trust him? Can we give him some minutes and see if he can hang? Now, of course, he's done it in the Bundesliga. He's done it against Bayern Munich. That's great. Representing your national team is just different. And so we've seen players who are okay at the club level. They get a shot with the national team, and they just play differently. And then we've seen opposites, where we've seen really good club players not play so great for their national team. We need to figure out which version of Joe Scally we're going to get. And the only way we know that is not in training, but in real games. Yeah. Now, there's a friendly against Bosnia that's coming up in December. Great opportunity to potentially bring in.
Is that a fixture window?
Joe Scally. I don't know. I don't think it's a fixture window, which hurts. But if it is, maybe the European playoffs or the CAF, the African playoffs are going on. Maybe that's the time we can bring Joe Scally in and give him a look. But I think it's important also for Gregg to see what he's about in training, around the guys. Like, there's all these little things. So I think he needs minutes for us to really properly evaluate if he's somebody we can trust in big moments.
Yeah, and to give my take to Pablo's question there, and I want everybody else's take as well. So if you guys are, Joe Scally should be getting his minutes, not saying starting, whatever, let us know in the comments. I'm very curious about that because it is a hot topic. He's got the most minutes of any of our players in Europe's top 5 leagues, and he's young. He comes from the youth national team systems. He's obviously grew up playing with Gio Reyna. He was in the NYCFC system, but then all of a sudden he gets bought by Gladbach, and now he's in the first team, and now he's playing, and he can play left back. He's played right back. He's played right wing back, left wing back. He's got that versatility, and he's young, and that's why I want to see him get some time, because you learn so much from these camps, and you learn so much from, again, Jimmy talked about the fact of he's watching Eddie Pope play those games. But what's even crazier is when you get on the field and you realize just how much quicker the game is. Even in the Bundesliga, the international game is quicker. The amount of time you have, the amount of space on the field, everything is just a little more chaotic, and you don't know it until you've lived in it. I think getting valuable experience for a player like that, who's obviously proven to a coach as a teenager that he should be playing every single game in the Bundesliga in multiple positions, that he can play for our national team. And then you, like Jimmy said, you get the version of him. And not only that, Jimmy, my worry with this kind of thing is, we saw this with Conrad when he was young. We saw this with Musa. Oh yeah, Conrad. Are you talking about Conradinho? You're Conradinho. Yeah, you're a 10. He's not. But we saw that with him. We saw it with a number of guys that get called in right away, and you're like, not quite there yet, right? You get them on the field. The game's a little bit too pacey. They're sort of looking for themselves. Daryl Dike was another one that I wasn't super impressed with the first few times. Just looked off the pace. Mm-hmm. And then you want to keep going with them. Or you say, okay, let's give them a break, give them a breather off one camp, and you bring them back in. But you don't know until you put them into that place to see how they react to the international game and how they react to the group. And like you said, in a triple fixture date, you're changing all these things. It's really hard to put a player like that in a position to be successful if there's all these random players who also haven't been playing consistently together. When you change one or two things, perfect chance to put a guy in, because the game is predictable. There's other players that are on the same page, and I know there was a number of changes in that back line, but it seemed like a better chance, and then this Jamaica one as well. Anyways, we don't have to talk too much about Joe Scally, and I missed those last comments.
Mainly about DeAndre Yedlin's performance. Somebody said that he was the best he's performed in a U.S. shirt, and I think we could argue that he was steady, right? That's kind of what you want. You don't want a really hot or really cold DeAndre Yedlin, especially in the same 90 minutes. You want a nice, steady performance from your back line, disciplined performance from everybody in your back line. And I think we got that, especially in the second half from the group. I was really impressed with the team shape and in the cover and balance ultimately from a defensive perspective. And Yedlin was a big reason as to why they were accomplishing that. And he just basically then furthered it by saying that we shouldn't make too many changes. If we're critical of these performances, I'm paraphrasing now, then if we have a chance to kind of build off of something that's positive, we should stick with it. And I'm the same. The only two changes I would make are actually the two changes that we're forced to make with Weston McKennie. And there's some talk now. Gregg, I guess, came out in his press conference and said that it's either going to be Busio or Leggett or Acosta that are going to start. Zach Steffen will start in this one.
Hey, he listens to the podcast. We'd already talked about that.
I know.
We talked
about
it in our preview. You know what I mean? They got to pay attention.
Oh,
the Mark McKenzie one's the only one, but I think Chris Richards got to go in terms of just minutes played. Mark, obviously, good in these kind of fire drill situations. But, I agree with you. I would only go with those two changes. And then Zack also earning himself a second start. You know, it's funny, and I don't really read all the snippets that are being cut off by the way, Italy are going to the playoff for anybody who's watching the international game or not watching and is curious about the World Cup qualifying adventures. Italy are now going to the playoff. So
they got second behind Switzerland. Dude, listen, they missed a penalty in each of their games against Switzerland, one against Switzerland and then home against Bulgaria. And they just shot themselves in the foot, which just seems kind of Italian-esque. But now they go in the playoff, man. I mean, you never know. And over two legs, they lost to Sweden last time around. So it's not just us that has all this drama surrounding their team. And now I assume people might want Mancini fired, even though he just won the Euros, which is how extreme and emotional this sport can get around the world, which I'm here for. I love it.
Yeah. And by the way, so the Zack Steffen and Matt Turner discussion is an interesting one, right? Because they're very different types of players. And we have that all over the field. But when you have goalkeepers, Matt Turner never lost the starting job based on his performance, right? It's just we've now moved into a situation where I think the team has played poorly for long periods of World Cup qualifying. And to have a goalkeeper that at times where, you know what it's like, Jimmy, when you're chasing the ball a bunch or a team's pressing you, you give the ball away, it keeps coming, and you just keep on wanting to occasionally you just want that guy, and sometimes you zing it into a player who then tries something difficult. And then everybody goes, keep the ball. And when you have a player like Zack Steffen, in tough moments like that, he puts his head up. He's not afraid to try to keep the ball. And I think that's a calming presence for a team where when you go backwards 2-3 passes and a team is pressing you, it's still an opportunity to keep possession instead of everything being, we saw it with Mexico. Mexico baited us on that. But by the time we always got to them, Ochoa was lumping it, and he was lumping it long, whereas Zack Steffen picked and chose his moments to clip a ball to the sideline or that sick ball that he played through to Musa, slotting through three players. And I think that calming presence at difficult times is even more important than in good times, because you know that there's somebody that's not just looking to hit the ball long and be safe, which I think has its place in the game, but also looking to maybe give the team a breath by picking out the right pass or giving more options so that it's not just, hey, now we're defending again after we just worked hard to win it. Thoughts?
Yeah, it's great. I love your insight there. I think that,
but I do feel bad for Turner, by the way, because
I feel bad for Matt.
You're also
Matt
come on.
I don't know. Like I told you, I played during an era where we had Brad Friedel and Casey Keller and Tim Howard, and it always felt like that was just a normal part of playing for the national team, that there was competition in every single spot. And we got away from that for a while because Tim Howard was so incredibly dominant that Brad Guzan couldn't really take it, right? Couldn't outplay Tim enough to really put some pressure on him. Nick Raimondo, listen, we love those guys. They're amazing human beings, but not enough to push Tim Howard out of the spot. And now we got two guys that can push each other out of the spot. And that is a good problem to have. So I'm here for it. I got plenty of time. Zack Steffen probably had his best performance in a U.S. shirt and making some big saves early on to keep us in it. And then it was just steady throughout. And that's what you want. Talking about the defense and the goalkeeper, you just want good, steady, on at least from our perspective, predictable players that are going to do the work, like doing the work. Well, when I think about Miles Robinson and Walker Zimmerman, and you and I were both defenders, even though I know that you moonlighted as someone that could attack. And I mean that with nothing but love. And you were good at it at times. I'm just going to be busting your balls. But we have two center backs in Miles and Walker that I think like to defend. And I think defending's a lost art. And the more that we can get guys to buy in of being proud of how we defend and being proud of getting a clean sheet against Mexico and making plays and doing everything we can to be as difficult as possible to play against, That's going to set us up for success, because then we've already demonstrated we have the attacking talent. If we can just get everybody on the same page and identify those numerical advantages, hopefully more in the first half and the second half. But if we have to wait till the second half to win games, I'm okay with that too, if that's part of our DNA. But
yeah.
It's all trending in the right direction, because we're starting to get more competition in more spots. Yedlin wasn't even really on the radar, honestly. I wasn't even thinking about DeAndre Yedlin moving forward. It was Dest, it was Reggie Cannon, and then Joe Scally comes out of nowhere.
Joe Scally conversation about Reggie Cannon and others in terms of the depth charts, right? Giving Scally a chance to move up the depth charts if Yedlin's your number one. By the way, Ike says Steffen being able to play 30-yard balls to our wingers' feet helps eliminate
100%.
teams pressing us so hard. We
100%.
fully agree with that. Well, Jimmy, since you seem to know everything, let me ask you this.
That's
January, February, you know the months that go from there. But the beginning of the year next year, when we have our next qualifiers, are during a period when obviously Matt Turner out of season.
Yes.
Okay. And then Zach Steffen not getting regular minutes. What happens in that context to you? Like, does that change things? There's a sharpness to. I mean, I guess Zach Steffen will be in training at a high level, and that's where he's getting his reps anyway right now. But still,
well, I'll say that I suspect that Zach Steffen will get cup games, and there's a lot of FA Cup games and league. Well, they're out of the League Cup, FA Cup games in January. He's going to get a couple games, and you're right, they're going to have some pretty high level trainings. It does hurt Matt Turner a little bit. I assume there'll be some January camp of some capacity, but even then, that's still glorified training. So I think that Zach Steffen would still be your guy, because he's just been in the rotation. There's no sitting out. We don't know how far the New England Revolution are even going to go in the playoffs. They could lose in the first round. Philadelphia Union, were the Supporters Shield winners last year, had to wait 20 days because of an international break, and then came back and got bounced in the first round. Same thing could happen to the Revs. Feel really unfair given the season that they've had, but that's how the MLS Cup playoffs work. So, yeah, I think that Zach Steffen is probably the guy. I mean, it's as Gregg mentioned, the only reason that he's going with him over Matt Turner is because he's got better feet, and that speaks to Ike's point and everybody else that can see it. Zach can play. He can use his feet and get us out of situations. And I'm still laughing at that ball he threaded in the first half against Mexico through two lines of pressure on the ground, right up the middle. Like, that is so dangerous. It's high risk, high reward, and thankfully it was high reward, because if it gets cut out, we're pretty vulnerable because we spread out to support the play. But I love the audacity and the courage to do so if it works, of course. And then if it doesn't, the coach is going to be right up your ass, as he should be.
Well, I want to know what everybody that's watching this right now thinks. Give us a S for Steffen, T for Turner. Want to know kind of from your perspectives what you've seen. I mean, Turner has been fantastic for this national team. And are we over glorifying playing out of the back or being good with your feet? Is there an actual value in the way this national team even plays, other than a couple of examples a game? And is that enough to be the difference? Or do you think Matt Turner, who stood on his head a few times to keep this team getting points in World Cup qualifying, should that be the thing that H for Horvath we have in there from William Jackson? That's not part of the game. You get Turner or you get Steffen. Don't break the rules.
That's it.
But Jimmy, let's talk about Christian Pulisic. All right, super sub. Do you think that he starts against Jamaica?
That's a good question. I think that he might, based on the comments that Gregg made once again in this press conference about, feeling and kind of touch and go, seeing how Christian feels.
It comes down to a judgment call. It comes down to how we feel he can best affect the opponent, obviously.
Okay.
And then we know that there's a coach, his day-to-day coach, like his real Pulisic's real boss, who's like just watching it intently, going like, don't test me.
I think that given that he said we'll see how it, I don't know, that just feels like he's going to be a sub. I think that's a conversation that was already had between the U.S.
Do you think that's an actual conversation, or do you think that's a tactical game playing he's playing, which is like Jamaica now have to try to figure out who our lineup is, right? And when we play with Tim Weah or Brennan Aronson, it's going to be different than who we put into our midfield, whether that's Busio. It's a different style of play. Like, we've got these different threats now. Do you think part of that is the tactical game playing of the media and Jamaica having to overthink how they're going to roll out, whether they press or sit? Or do you think this is an actual just straight up conversation, or a little bit of both? Or all?
Well, honestly, if I'm Jamaica and I'm the manager, Theodore Whitmore, I have to be worried about myself. I don't even know if Jamaica knows what their best 11 is. And you have to start there, buddy. I mean, you can try to prepare for us all you want, but I get the sense that Jamaica's going to try to absorb pressure and counter. When they try to play a high line, it doesn't always work for them. We did beat them 2-0 in Austin not too long ago, but we also beat them in the quarterfinals of the Gold Cup 1-0. That was a late Matthew Hoppe goal in the 83rd minute to secure the 1-0 there. We were having trouble scoring in that tournament, and we're finding ways to dig it out and again be a second half team. So fair play to Hoppe on that one. But I would say that they need to figure out a way to absorb the pressure and not break their lines. If we can wear them down, which is why I think Busio should start. He's going to be a better passer of the ball than Acosta and Leggett. And I think that he'll be able to lock that a little bit. You could maybe ask Musa to push a little bit higher because McKinney isn't in. So, but if I'm Jamaica, I don't know if it really changes much, whether Pulisic is running at me or if Aaronson's running at me. They're both pretty good in 1v1 situations. I think Pulisic's a little bit more dynamic and stretching a field, not necessarily with running, but with the ball. And he's a little bit more, he can create a little bit more on his own than Aaronson can, in my humble opinion. Aaronson's getting closer and trying to break in and make his own stamp on things. And I think he's been tremendous in every game he's played for us in World Cup qualifying. Didn't have as much influence in this last one.
Yeah.
But I think Mexico actually did a pretty good job of stacking him up.
Off game.
He did.
He didn't get the ball in very, very many good spaces. And usually we've been very complimentary of him and his ability to find ways to help the team, right? Press and all those things. His energy is always fantastic. But it felt like his energy was always off a little bit of what to do and where and those types of things, which is uncharacteristic of him. But, you know, considering the run of form he was on, both at the club level and this, you can excuse what I think was an average performance, not a bad performance by any means, but an average performance at that point.
Well, I'm glad you brought up average, because average Bond is saying I'd rather have Christian as a super sub and keep Aaronson, Weah, and Pepe up front. I agree. There's just something about that continuity of those three. I mean, Timo Weah for sure is an automatic starter. He was tremendous, and you got to give him another run out. He's building off that Costa Rica game where he scored. Obviously, my man of the match, frankly, against Mexico. Yep. And I want to continue to see Timo Weah as he continues to make it his own. With regard to Aaronson Pulisic, I just because Pulisic feels a little brittle right now, and because there's a lot of talk about his injury concerns, there's going to be a good time, I think, if the game opens up and stretches out, because at some point, Jamaica needs to win this one. Getting a draw, okay, it gives them 1 point closer. Panama beats El Salvador, but it doesn't really help them. They need to go for it. And imagine bringing on a Pulisic to kind of just kill the game off or go on and score the winner. And that might be, I honestly feel like this conversation's already been had with Christian Pulisic before these two games even kicked off.
Yeah.
Hey man, you're going to be a sub for these next two. You know,
but even if they lost, what if they lost to Mexico? You think even then there's the pressure to change that?
Well, potentially, but because it worked out the way it did, I think you have the luxury of bringing him off the bench once again. And still, so you make the player knows, you have that conversation, you keep his club happy, who are obviously paying the majority of his bills. And you still get to kind of keep the same group of players together to see if they can continue to build. Pulisic, when healthy, is obviously a starter, no question. But in this particular moment, I would leave him on the bench, and I think he's okay with that. If he can come on for 30 minutes and still be the hero, who wouldn't sign up for that?
Yeah. Hey, Jimmy, there's a few people in the comments asking about this Pulisic to Barcelona situation.
Yeah.
Now, we'll talk about it a lot on Wednesday when we do our sort of November recap. We're going to do a post-mortem
I love that.
on the month that was. And do you initially, when I heard that, right? I don't think about Barcelona the way that I did, right? I didn't think this is a great situation for Serginho Dest to be in as a developing player. But then when I thought about Pulisic's current situation versus a Barcelona situation, I was like, oh, this could be a great situation for him, you know, in terms of being able to lift that team who has no money, you know, be in a loan, and also playing in a free-flowing attacking system that I think puts him in really good spots to help the team differently than I think Chelsea have so much depth that I just don't see how Pulisic, I mean, I see how he's a starter because when he's at his best, he is a starter at Chelsea, but that constant rotation of players, it makes me wonder, and you know, they play 70 games a year, but it makes me wonder if a situation like a Barcelona, if not Barcelona, would be a good one for him for 6 months to help. What's your just general take on that if you've given it any thought?
Oh, I've given it plenty of thought. I would say that, to your point about Chelsea, he does feel at times surplus goods, and there's always going to be a ton of competition to play in that team. And if he's not healthy and can't stay healthy for a significant amount of time, it's going to be hard for him to find minutes and be relied upon in an important way.
Yeah.
Not to say that wouldn't change if he went to Barcelona. Now, if he was going to
but Chelsea can buy something every window if they want, right?
True.
And they've got 3 or 4 in his position. Like at times he was competing with Mason Mount for his spot. And
Mason Mount. You got Zack, who kind of feels like he doesn't get played enough, and that guy's super talented. You got Hudson-Odoi, who's really trying to push in and get more minutes. You know, they're talking about potentially Timo Werner can mean,
Kai Havertz, Timo Werner,
and
they all sort of just sit up top, and now with Lukaku you just go, okay, now there's one spot that's guaranteed up top, right? Before, there was this constant rotation. They were playing false nines, and they were just sort of trying to figure it all out. And so you saw a little bit different. But now you're like, okay, now there's one spot that's gone.
If he was going to a Barcelona team that was being managed by Everton reject Ronald Koeman, then I would have some issues because it just didn't seem like the team bought into what Koeman was, or at least had checked out at that point about what he was bringing to the table, and the results reflected that. Now with Xavi in, that changes my whole perspective on Barcelona. I think Xavi's going to be an excellent coach.
Yeah.
I love what he's been saying, and I know that he's going to follow through because we can all see it. The guy was already a coach on the field. Now he just has to do it from the sideline. And of course, he's going to have to trust some of his players to dictate the terms just like he used to. But he's got some young players that are extremely talented. So for Pulisic, who's 23 right now, to come into a Barcelona team right now and potentially play for them, though I guess Chelsea might not make a move in January, but even over the summer, let's say he goes to Barcelona over the summer where they got a little bit more of their stuff together on the financial side and Xavi can start to really work the team. I like that. The problem is, at least under Koeman, Serginho Dest was playing on the right wing, and that's kind of where Pulisic plays. Yeah. So that would be weird for them to compete for a spot. Imagine never in a million
play
years.
On the left wing in the pocket driving in. We got two guys that are going to be playing at Barcelona. They don't even start on our national team, Jimmy. That's how good we are.
Dude, you imagine. I never thought in a million years we could potentially have two Americans competing for our same starting spot at Barcelona. That is just, I can't believe that's escaping my lips. Anyway.
Yeah, both of them are super subs on our national team, Jimmy, because we got so much depth. Those guys can't even get a game right now. No, I'm just kidding. I'm kidding, but
I think that this would be, he'd be a great coach to learn from. Not to take anything away from Tuchel, who is very defense focused, but I think Xavi would bring an element and an air of maybe getting even more out of Christian to think about different things in different situations that I think could potentially raise his game. Tuchel could raise his game from a defensive perspective. That's kind of how I see it, and being efficient with his movement. But with regard to like how to create and how to pick your spots when attacking, I think Xavi would be amazing for Christian Pulisic, and obviously to build a rapport with Serginho Dest would be a great thing as well. But I'd be all for it, frankly, especially if it was just going to be this fight and this struggle to get minutes at Chelsea. And he's just kind of, when am I going to get my turn? When am I going to get my turn? And then 3 years later, he's 26 and still hasn't really gotten his turn, you know? So not to say Barcelona wouldn't be a fight to get minutes as well, because if Ousmane Dembele gets healthy, who knows? Because he's kind of the Christian Pulisic of Barcelona.
But he's being linked in exits too.
That's true. You know, and you got Ansu Fati and another. It's not like it's going to be easy.
There's not going to be a lot of people that want to be in at Barcelona, given their situation contractually, financially, knowing that it's going to be a rebuild. I think it's great for Xavi. I think it's great for the people that are part of the project. I think that would be great for Christian Pulisic. But for others, I do wonder if they're looking for an exit too, knowing that this could be a multi-year project before you're actually competing for a trophy again. And by the way, for all of you newbies, make sure you hit that like button. That sends this thing out into the algorithm ethos that helps people find it and put it right in front of them so they can join this conversation as well. We're going to take a quick break, Jimmy. And if you're listening to this in podcast form, we'll be back with you in a moment. If you're watching this on YouTube, stay right here. Hey, everyone. Welcome back. Jimmy, we've covered a lot of ground so far, man. A lot to talk about. Exciting times. You know what's fun, though? Having our USMNT Hour after a U.S. win versus Mexico. It makes everything a lot easier because the comments that come in tend to be a little less just pointed. You know, people are here for the conversation. But let's talk about Canada versus Mexico.
Let's do it.
Yes, Jimmy, I know this is the USMNT Hour, but this game has massive implications for Greg, for you, for everyone involved, and getting to qualification and being in the top three. So I just want to get your take on a few select topics, as well as the people in the comments. Send us in your thoughts on these as well. Chicharito's exit, his exile from the national team. Do you think that there is some merit to getting him back in? He ended up finishing the season very strong with the LA Galaxy. He's obviously a legend of the Mexico national team. That bit of energy, if you go back and watch, we had that. I think it was the sizzle that came on just before we started our pre CBS Sports HQ show, where it showed the Vela Chicharito connection on the field with the national team. Do you think that there is an opportunity for that, or are we just like kind of blowing smoke right now about something that means nothing? And if not, you know, what do you think is missing from this Mexico attack that, other than a couple of counterattacks, don't look like the Mexico that we saw in the summer, where they're cutting in, driving in, combination play where you always feel like we're a step behind everything? I mean, what's going on, Jimmy?
It's a good question. And I want to reiterate something that we've heard throughout our playing careers and this is really helpful, I think. You're never as good as you think you are with the hype saying, and you're never as bad as all the negativity, right? It's somewhere in the middle. And if you can kind of look at things unemotionally, you can get to a little bit more of the heart of the issues. With regard to Chicharito, 17 goals in 20 games for the Galaxy, 5 goals in his last 5, I think 6 in his last 7 as the Galaxy were trying to make that last stand. What I really liked about his performances at the end was that he put the team on his shoulders and said, I'm going to lead us to the playoffs. Now, they fell a little bit short and got a little unlucky because the referees swallowed their whistle in Kansas City against Salt Lake. Bigger conversation for another time, but get it together, referees. They might have done it, right? And Galaxy could have been in the playoffs, so we could be talking about Chicharito leading the Galaxy in a much different way, and you never know which version of Chicharito you're going to get. With regard to his inclusion, I don't think he starts, but to your point, because Raul Jimenez is such a presence and in a much different way than Chicharito, but when you bring on Funes Mori in the game, and you took out Tecatito at that point, so you're bringing on a second forward ultimately to play up high with Raul Jimenez. They're kind of the same type of player. And to have some contrast, to have someone who sniffs around the box like Chicharito would be nice, frankly. I'm quite surprised that Tata Martino has taken such a hard stance on Chicharito. I get the sense that it almost feels personal. So I don't know if there was something that happened behind the scenes, or, maybe Tata's one of those coaches where FMF, the Federation for Mexico, is, oh, you got to play Chicharito, and his first thing about I'm in control here is like, Chicharito will never play for me, or whatever drama.
Well, I think it's just like with Vela, where you don't get to pick and choose when you get called to the national team, right? It's an honor to represent the national team. If you're fit and healthy, you go in and you play, and then you be part, like you're part of the system, or you're not part of the system, which I totally understand. And to have a different dynamic of forward. And I know that Chucky Lozano should have scored. I know that Tecatito should have scored, or at least put it on frame. But I still look at it as an opportunity when you look at that game and say, but it wasn't like they were creating a ton of chances outside of that. Those were really great buildups. And not to say you should have more chances than that, but Mexico, that we've always known, is one that you're, like you said, you got to defend like hell. You got to fight like hell. You got to get a little bit of luck. You got to make a couple huge saves or a couple big plays, and you can beat Mexico. But like normally it's all of those things that you go up against. And it didn't feel like that for Mexico. Now they're going to face Canada, that has arguably the most informed attack in CONCACAF right now. And with Alphonso Davies having played up top next to Jonathan David, I mean, that's a pretty lethal attacking duo, with Kyle Larin coming off the bench, with Cavallini coming off the bench, with Ugbo coming off the bench, who made his debut, grew up in the Chelsea system, and then plays at Genk now. Like, you have a lot of quality players that Mexico's going to have to play against on the defensive side. Also, like
minus 8-degree weather, so that'll be interesting for both sides. I'll jump in and say really quick, that was on the attacking side of the ball. In midfield, Hector Herrera was started, Romo started, and they had Edson Alvarez, who's done awesome for Ajax, but they haven't been a single pivot, and he had to cover a lot of ground. So if Canada actually watches the game, I'm sure they will, how did the U.S. effectively run midfield? And it was trying to create overloads on Edson Alvarez, who had to cover more ground than I think he's suited for. They would have been better in a double pivot, frankly, to kind of slow down Musa and to slow down McKinney's runs, especially in the second half. And they just didn't do it. And I think our adjustments were a little bit better than theirs. And we just cleaned our game up a little bit. When I look at their back line, you had Johan Vasquez, only his third cap ever, started against the U.S. Dominguez is okay, but is he your first choice? Maybe depending on the opponent. Chaka Rodriguez, who was out there eye-gouging Brendan Aronson. That guy just, there's some element of his game. I understand why he's with the Mexican national team, but then he dabbles in the dark arts of defending, and he's a liability for me. And I don't necessarily trust his defending. And then also Gallardo on the left side. Their back line was weak. You get Hector Moreno. Araujo was out due to a red card. You get guys that are just a little steadier, and I think that tightens things up a little bit, Heath. And I think you would have seen a team that was better in transition because they're playing the balls better, because they're just better players with the ball. And that allows everybody to take, 5 more yards up the field? But that 5 yards is so crucial. So if Mexico can establish that, I don't know who's healthy and who's not and who's going to be able to start for them, but they're going to get absolutely crushed by that counterattack from Canada. And they knew that, because when they played at Estadio Azteca, it was 1-1. And they pushed Alphonso Davies up high, John Herdman did, for the coach of Canada, because he knew that would pin that back line, which isn't very fast, back. And they'd have to drop off a little bit. And when they dropped off, that opened up pockets of space underneath. So it's really important for Mexico to try to establish some type of flow rhythm higher up the field, but without necessarily keeping them too vulnerable in the back. It's a tricky time, I think, for Mexico, because I don't think they have all their best players available. And that is going to be tough because this Canada team can taste it. I think they can really sense that this is a time where Mexico looks a little vulnerable and they're under so much pressure from the media. But again, if we look at it, we take the emotion out of it, there's on the same amount of points that we are. They probably need 11 to 14 points out of their next 7 games, out of 21 available to qualify for the World Cup.
To be honest.
And at the end of the day, that's all that really matters. And that's what Tata Martino is trying to emphasize. And then we'll see who gets farther in the World Cup, right? Because that, team changes a lot and attitudes and confidence change a lot in a year's time.
14 points, you'd be averaging 2 points per game. That's a lot. You're definitely qualifying at that. Even 11.
Yeah, I agree.
You
11, I think 11 more points. So if they get 25 points along with us, if you get to 25 points in this Ocho, in the octagonal, then I think you're going to book your ticket. Yeah.
And Jimmy, 2 things there. One, I want to know what everybody's take is. I know this is USMNT Hour, but I want your unbiased
opinion. We went Concacaf Hour.
Yeah. Of who you think is going to win that game. U.S., Mexico, do you think not U.S., Canada, Mexico, do you think it's going to be a draw? This is in Edmonton. It is going to be freezing conditions. I think Mexico is somewhere in like Indiana or something training right now. I saw them training in like blizzard conditions, getting ready for this. I don't know why. I literally think they're in Indiana or something like that. I saw a friend of mine that works, on the media side there, somewhere very cold watching the team. So I think they're prepping for that game, but I want to know everyone's take. Give me an M for Mexico. Give me a C for Canada. I feel like I'm doing one of those chants like defense. And in part 2 to that, Jimmy, was a way to say John Herdman's name wrong. Okay. You got it right, which shows we're growing here.
We're evolving.
On the show. We're evolving. John Herdman for everyone. Jimmy and I had unfortunately called him the wrong name for most of our adult lives, and it wasn't out of disrespect, and he deserves to have his name pronounced correctly. And now we're doing that. So just a good moment for growth for us. And if you're just now tuning into this, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe and throw a comment in, because let's get Jimmy flustered here.
And turn on your notifications.
Oh yeah, that helps too.
So you don't miss anything.
Yep. Because, if you're out hanging out, if you're hiding under your desk at work and that notification comes in and say, what should I do under this desk? Well, guess what? You got a live show now to tune into when you're hiding from your boss. Jimmy, is this the best? Is that result for the U.S. the best result from a U.S. men's national team perspective? Was there another one in this qualifying campaign specifically that you think was more important or big? I mean, obviously, I think Honduras is the biggest one, given the context of everything like that. We're seeing some results here saying my heart says 1-0 to Mexico. But do you think the Mexico game was the biggest, or was there another one in there where you were like, this is a turning point or a bigger moment or pivotal, because it's hard. Like you look at that, you look at the way Honduras could have finished and you're like, oh man, we could be in a different world right now.
Well, I would say the second half against Honduras probably stands out a little bit more, because it felt like that was the moment where, if it doesn't go well, we end up losing this game, Honduras, we're coming out of that first qualifying window with 1 point, the draw against Canada, where we had the lead 1-0 and we gave it away. We had a bit of a listless performance against El Salvador in the first match day of qualifying. That would have been a little bit
maybe a different coach too.
Maybe Greg, you're at that point, like maybe Gregg Berhalter isn't the guy. He had all this time. He'd been plenty of time to prep and had a whole summer of 2 different squads to figure out what was the best way forward. And maybe he's not the guy. I think in terms of pivotal moments, that second half, addressing all the mistakes he made in that starting lineup and making those changes right away was a growth. We're talking about growth, a growth moment for him. And then also the team just kind of coming alive and playing free and actually showing us what they're capable of when they're full of confidence and it feels like they're running downhill. It was tremendous. And then you have on the flip side with regard to this result, we already beaten Mexico twice this summer. So we still needed to have a good performance, but I didn't feel like it was as make or break. Like we could have dropped the points and Gregg is still in charge, but had he lost to Honduras on that third match day, yeah, that could have been curtains for him. So I think that feels the biggest. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. It's hard, right? From a personal standpoint, if you were to do the dose of Cero in isolation, you'd say, quite frankly, the U.S. should beat Mexico at home. That's sort of the point. That was sort of the tradition, right? In these games, win the dos. That's where Dos a Cero came from. But when you look at the ability to bounce back after a really tough first half in Honduras, being down, to perform the way that they did, I think gave them life, right? And you look at the progression there of Canada average, El Salvador average, but like, okay, there's a point there. Okay, there's a point that we're growing, we're learning something. And then you see this tanking performance, to see them bounce back and go, okay, we can do this. We can win games on the road. We can be difficult. I think one is bigger than the Mexico game because, again, I expect them to beat Mexico. But two, now you're going down to Jamaica with a different belief system of one, staying in games late, even if you're down. And I think there's something to that. But two, knowing that there are points on the road for you and potentially even 3 points on the road for you, which we struggled with in the 2018 cycle, or the horrific nature of which the U.S. went about the 2018 cycle. So I think that Honduras game is probably the biggest for me. Although when you add the Mexico to a summer of Mexico's, it's historic in its own ways. It's massive. It's huge. I'm proud of the group for the performance that they put out, but I'm still going with Honduras.
Yeah, no, we're on the same page, and I agree with that. I think that this is an interesting match, just to kind of bring it back to Canada, Mexico really quick. I saw some things there. Well, I guess when you brought up Berhalter, or we were talking about it, like, what do you do with Tata Martino? And I wonder if he loses to Canada, and maybe if it's as listless as it was against the U.S., and they just didn't really have a lot of answers, didn't finish their opportunities when they did. I wonder what's going to happen to Tata Martino, and I fear they might do something rash when I think he's still the best guy for the job. That's there. I think Canada might get the result though here. I
mean, Canada could get. I think I think they're probably the favorite at this point, especially playing in Edmonton.
Well, let me see what the bookies say. Keep going. Keep going.
Yeah, I want to know what the bookies are saying, but it's insanity to me to think that Tata Martino, you'll be finished third in qualifying, but you're behind Canada, you're behind the US. Like, it's still an automatic qualification spot. And that's the hard part for me through this whole process is we're looking at through these lens that Tata Martino got his first loss in qualifying, right? And now he's 4-2-1 in qualifying, same as the US, 4-2-1. And if he were to lose this, he could potentially be. That would put everyone on 14 points, wouldn't it? If the U.S. didn't beat Jamaica, if the U.S. lost to Jamaica, they'd all be on 14 points at the top of the table. Like, it's a weird imaginary bar that we'd be setting for Mexico, or even Gregg Berhalter at that point had things not gone his way, that you're still in an automatic World Cup qualifying spot with plenty of games to go, but they don't believe that you're the right man for the job moving forward. I think that'd be, but we've seen before, there's plenty of rash decisions that get made in managerial situations, especially when there's pressure. So
I know. Well, Mexico are actually the slight favorites for the bookies. Really? Yeah, they're plus 138 or 1.5 to 1. Canada's closer to 2 to 1 at plus 188. Alphonso Davies to score anytime is 3 to 1. I'm kind of looking at that. I feel like he's going to show up. I honestly think he's going to show up.
Especially now he's playing up top.
And he's playing in his hometown where he grew up in Edmonton, like he's going to want to do it. Didn't do it in the first game against Costa Rica. But maybe he's saving his best for Mexico. I actually might put a little scratch on that, everybody. Like $10. Like, let's not get crazy, okay? Just like $10.
Jimmy, when you and I were building our CONCACAF 11s, I was looking at all the defensive side of Canada because I just look at them on paper and I go, not that convincing as a backline, right? And then you look at what they win this last. They won 1-0, right?
Costa Rica, that's right.
Yeah, 1-0, another shutout for this team, and I go, okay, it's Costa Rica, it's whatever, but they're consistently good and they're rotating their squad. You and I both had players that didn't even start in that game in our CONCACAF 11. I had Alistair Johnston. I think you had Donnell Henry, right?
I was just like, I'm going to pick.
But they're like rotating. You got to pick one, but they're rotating all these guys and they're continuing to get results, which goes beyond a little bit of the bias that I have towards, the defenders, they play in MLS or whatever. I should be giving them more credit, more respect. That I feel like the bookies are doing the same thing with them right now, just looking at it going like, well, that attack against that defense, like Mexico has to be the favorite. But they've been good. And so you got to give them credit.
Yeah, they're the best defense in CONCACAF, tied with us, 4 goals against in 7 games. Mexico's got 5 goals against. I think what's most impressive is Costa Rica, who've only scored 4 goals, but they've only given up 6 in 7 games. They just can't hit the back of the net, which is going to be gloom and doom for them as they try to look to qualify. Other big matches, though, that we should get into really quick is Panama, El Salvador, because El Salvador would be doing Panama, everybody else a great service because Honduras blew it. by giving up 3 goals in 15 minutes when they were up 2-0 in Honduras this last match day. If El Salvador can now go to Panama and get a result, or a win in particular, would go a long way. But a draw, I think everybody would be happy with a draw because it makes it a little bit more chaotic. If Panama win and El Salvador is on 6, Jamaica's on 6, and we beat Jamaica, and Costa Rica loses, then it's just there's the haves and the have-nots. It's kind of curious. I know we talked about this a little bit on the preview, but
that's why you want Panama.
My eyes are on this Panama El Salvador game, man. It's going to be exciting.
That's the biggest game for me as well. And I still believe this, that El Salvador have been the most hard done by just results in this, where they've dominated. They were the better team against Jamaica. They were the better team in a number of their games so far in qualifying in terms of creating goals, like bona fide goal scoring opportunities, not necessarily possession in the run of play, but the better chances and more chances in the game. And they haven't gotten out of these with enough points. And I think eventually, and we talked about this with Jamaica, eventually they're going to round the corner and they're going to punish somebody, right? And it's all going to fall into place for them, both defensively and offensively, and they're going to close out a game. I think this is one that they could do this in the way that they match up well with Panama. Obviously, both those teams very good in transition, and it'll be a matter of who's going to sit in a deeper block, who's going to press higher. But I like El Salvador's opportunity to finally put a stamp on it. It was
0-0 in El Salvador, if I'm not mistaken, between those two. Yeah.
So yeah, that's my take on that.
It's a good one. It's a good one. It's interesting. And, Costa Rica can't score, then that's the way it goes. And without Keylor Navas, they're still doing okay defensively, but they don't have anything going forward. And then Honduras, I don't know what the hell's going on with Honduras. They're so good in the first half and absolute dumpster fire in the second half. So rest in peace to their World Cup hopes. They have to basically win every game from here on out.
It is weird. I've started associating Honduras with the World Cup now, and to see how far they've sort of fallen. And it's not a matter of like not being in good spots. They've been in really good spots in games and then just have crumbled in the second halves while the U.S. is coming to life. And it all comes back to that U.S. second half game where Honduras were actually decent. They were decent against Canada earlier on. They were okay, and then they've just literally realized like one shaky moment, and the whole thing comes crumbling down. But Jimmy, any closing thoughts on our USMNT hour? I know we covered everything. Obviously, it's CONCACAF related.
Yeah,
it's less so about the players at their clubs right now. It's about camp.
Yeah, of course. No, I love being respectful to all the countries that are playing in this region. I think it's important to shine some light on them too, because they have some really talented players, and they're going to be opponents of ours at some point. So we got to keep tabs on them. All right, everybody. But I'm absolutely buzzing for tomorrow. Make sure you join us for our live recap after the game. Come here, turn on your notifications, hit like and subscribe so you can get in here and we can have your raw emotion. And you'll get our raw emotion as well. It's going to be a raw emotion party. And that should be fun. And I'm curious to see who we roll out, as always, and how we play, of course. And I want to see how Jamaica does with this desperation, because if they don't win this one, their World Cup hopes could be done. So it's going to be a very fascinating and, I assume, a very intense game.
Well, if any sample size was enough for Mikel Antonio playing only 17 or so minutes, gets his goal, he's definitely going to be a threat against the U.S., especially in the form that he's in. But everyone, stay tuned to the Qué Golazo podcast and YouTube feed all week, because we have so much more in store for you as it relates to Tuesday's game in Kingston, the November window as a whole, as well as the return to domestic league action. There is right up there on the screen. We've got USMNT Hour live every Monday at 4:15 p.m. Eastern time. That's 1:15 Pacific time. We've got the live recap after the U.S.-Jamaica game. We've got the November World Cup qualifying takeaways live on Wednesday at 5 p.m. Eastern time. We got the weekend preview and betting tips, which is not live. That'll come out on Friday. And then the weekend recap live on Sunday, recapping all the club team games again. So follow Qué Golazo on Twitter at Qué Golazo Pod. Subscribe to Qué Golazo wherever you get your podcast, and leave us a glowing review. As we said, you can say a bad comment, but give us 5 stars. And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you smash that like button and subscribe to the channel. And until tomorrow, peace out from Jimmy and I.
Later.